TalkTainmentRadio.com.
We give you a reason to come.
The world's greatest radio.
We give you a reason to stay.
Radio the way it should be heard.
You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guests and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, 3MR Production, its ownership, management, or staff.
We've got the power.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, radio the way it should be heard. And you can hear Mr. Fuller every week at this time exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. And we get into this every week. And one of the things that we try to talk about is what all of this really means in the way in which we're dealing with life and all the things that we have to do day to day. And that's the key critical factor in all of this, is understanding which way this thing is going and attempting in some constructive way to deal with it. But joining me, of course, every week at this time, and that means Wednesday, 10 a.m. live. But you can always podcast. You can go to TalkTainmentRadio.com, pull up The Compensatory Concept, and you can talk to Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. by listening to him. And as you listen, then you can add what you want to add and think about what you want to think about as we get into this. But joining me, of course, is Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Mr. Fuller, how are you, sir?
I'm still learning.
Okay, Mr. Fuller, let's get right to it. First, before we go any further, tell us about how to reach what we call the definitive books on racism, white supremacy, race relations, etc. The definitive works. You have developed 2 definitive works on that. Could you tell us exactly how to get those books, Mr. Fuller?
You can get the books, both the basic book and the edition, which came out in 2010. That's called a word guide, a codified word guide. You can get them by punching into your computer the word tiny, TINY, .cc/forward, and then the word Fuller in capital letters, FULLER. I'll repeat, the word tiny, TINY, .cc/forward, then the word Fuller, FULLER, in capital letters, and a description of the books, the works that I have produced should come up on your screen, and a form for ordering.
Okay, so at least folks can get a hold of the work and figure out, then they can take it from there and then study it and listen to what's happening. Okay, Mr. Fuller, as we deal with all of these things that are happening on the planet, there are some things I'm sure that you've been looking at that you might want to present this morning that you are dealing with. So let's get an idea of what you've observed that strikes you this day, what strikes you as being quite peculiar, or what sticks out in your mind as something that we need to pay more attention to on this day. Mr. Fuller.
Problem solving. People are not focused on problem solving. And I think that's what should be the order of the day all over the planet. The best way, the most constructive way to go about solving problems and codifying the methods for doing so, meaning doing the same thing over and over again as long as that same thing works in the most constructive manner. And this is what's not being done. People's minds are kind of scattered. They're very much unfocused. People want to do a little of this and a little of that and run here and run there and contact this person and contact that person. You see people walking up and down the street talking on cell phones, and they're just kind of dabbling in a little of this and a little of that. It's not a central focus on problem solving. And that should be what everybody's really thinking about on a minute-by-minute basis all over the planet along about now, because there's so much chaos. There's so much unfocused activity. And the activity that is focused, the people who have the most focus in the things that they do, are the people who are the troublemakers. And that includes, of course, the people who believe in the old standards that they have stuck by, that is more productive for them and their agenda, and that is the people that believes in mistreating people based on color, called racism.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the biggest factor. But now the people who are the victims of racism, people being mistreated based on color, are just kind of in disarray. They're just kind of just walking around, just bumping into things. They don't know what to do next about anything. They don't have a priority. They don't have a focus. And they just constantly want to usually just make contact with other people without a reason for the contact. Mm-hmm. And that's very, very poisonous. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't have a constructive reason for contacting anybody, then you shouldn't be contacting that somebody that you're going to contact. If you don't have a very, very focused, constructive reason for doing so, and that should be the first order of business. That should be the focus. If you contact someone, know in advance what you're contacting the person for, and make sure that what you're contacting them for is for a constructive reason, and have some idea about what the constructive outcome of that contact is going to be before you make it. And that's kind of hard for people to do, because we're such in the habit of just kind of wandering around, bumping into things when we're given any kind of leeway, any kind of breathing space. Just kind of just do stuff without reason.
Mm-hmm. And so what do you want to change, Mr. Fuller? Well, I mean, how do we get a hold of this? I mean, what is the prescription?
Well, that's just it. The focus should be problem solving, and everybody has problems. So you think in terms of, if I have a problem and I want to talk to someone about my problem, whatever that problem is, then that would make sense in having constructive contact with someone. But limit my conversation to problem solving. Don't let it wander off into anything else. All conversations now, particularly among subject people, desperate people, black people, all over the planet, should be about problem solving. And it's real important to think in terms of just problem solving. That means doing away with a lot of trivial activities, which the non-white peoples, black people of the planet, are prone to do. That means eliminating things like celebrations. What type of celebrations? Celebrations of any kind, period. We're not qualified to celebrate anything. Now, I know that's a bombshell with a lot of people, and a lot of people say, oh, that's nonsense. No, it's not, when you consider the desperate situation that we have been in for some time. We have not been in a problem-solving mode. We have been in a seeking festivities mode, and that makes for more problems, because many of black people's festivities, particularly in the northwestern hemisphere, and from what I've heard in the southern hemisphere, particularly places like the what is called the favelas of Brazil, what you get when black people make contact with each other is a lot of hostility. And the traditional activities, which are mostly non-constructive. Mm-hmm. drug dealing, the parties turn into gunfights, some type of animosity is spread. All of the poisons come to the surface.
But
So
now,
if
Mr.
we just concentrated on making every contact constructive, every conversation constructive, no more random conversations, no more standing, around yawning and stretching your arms and then looking for something to say and just saying anything when nothing constructive comes to mind. That's an old tradition, an old habit. It's a part of what we call standard black culture in the Northwestern Hemisphere. It should be abolished forever. It serves no constructive purpose whatsoever, and it's very destructive, even when it appears not to be.
So I should not touch bases with anyone at any point in the day unless I have something constructive to say, including my family, including my wife, or if it's a female, including her husband, children. Is this what you're saying?
Particularly, the closer the people are to you, whatever that closeness means, then it definitely should be more constructive. Otherwise, it's going to wind up being trivial conversation that's going to lead to some type of hostility.
But men and women who are married, Mr. Fuller, sometimes every conversation, sometimes they just talk just to talk. Sometimes they just, they talk sweet talk to each other. Are you saying that's, that it has to be constructive? They can't have moments of tenderness with each other?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying if it has a constructive result, yes. But if it winds up being an argument, accusations back and forth and this type of thing, and I don't think you like me like you used to and this type of thing, that's non-constructive conversation. It shouldn't lead into that. And if it leads into that, that means that the conversation should be rechecked, the type of conversations that you settle on having. Too many people complain about all of their relationships. When you talk to people, if people just stop and think about it, I can't get along with my cousin. I had a falling out with my wife. I don't know what I'm going to do about my daughter. I can't talk to her, And there's too much yakking. See, and the yakking, as they say, leads to non-constructive results.
Uh-huh.
People know this. Nobody has to tell them. People know when when they have a lot of stress and anxiety, and it mostly comes from the way that they contact people and the way that people contact them. And that's family relationships, work relationships. The person comes over from the other cubicle, and the person says, "Uh-oh,
but
here
Mr.
we go
Fuller,
again."
Wait a minute. What about all the hugging that black folks do when they greet each other? They hug each other. They fall out over hugging each other, and they just smile, and they grin, and they touch, and they laugh, and they play. Come on, Mr. Fuller. You asking me to give up all that humanity, all that warmth, and just be somber and dead-like and serious at all times? Is this what you're recommending?
No. You can be jovial and all like that, but it's got to be genuine and based on something. People are more constructive and have better feelings about each other when they are doing something constructive. It's that non-constructive contact or the abstract contacts when they just do things just to be doing it.
So let's say, for example,
yes.
I go to a family reunion. Now, these are happening, as you know, this time of the year quite a bit. Let's say there's a bunch of family reunions. The families get together and they have a good time. There's no conflict. Everybody's glad to see each other. Aunt May is there. Mama Johnson is there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm trying to understand and put this in perspective. You say that black folks shouldn't contact each other, they shouldn't talk to each other, et cetera, et cetera. Are you saying that we should do no more of these family reunions and pull people together and have a good time with each other? Is this what you're saying? Because that's like a celebration. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Fuller?
No, I'm saying the good time, every minute of it, should consist of constructive activity. And you have to have some structure. People who have had family reunions have noticed that the ones that have some structure to them, where they all come together and they all have a plan Like they come together every year. And Cousin Jack, he's talked about from the last family reunion. He was talking about solving somebody's problems there in the family, and that he promised that when he came the next time, he would be able to help out Cousin Jake, Aunt Susie, with a problem that she is having. And he says, now at the last family reunion, we discussed Cousin Susie's problem. Now, we have been able to resolve that in the interim because we discussed it in the last. We sat around the table, we ate, we all were relaxed and whatnot, but she was having this problem. Now, nobody knew what to do about the problem. She didn't know what to do about it. But Cousin Willie over here, I mean, he knew something about what she was talking about. So they have gotten together in the interim. And it's nice to be able to announce here at the reunion that we resolved Cousin Susie's problem, because she didn't even know anything about Cousin Henry over there. She just met him at the last reunion. But he knew a lot about the problem that she was having because he's in that type of business. She was having a real estate problem or something, or she was having a problem on her job. And he was saying that he, as an attorney, he would know something about how to resolve that. So you can structure your family reunions just like you would structure any gathering.
So what you're saying is that you don't have to take the joy out of the reunion. You're just saying add something in that's meaningful and purposeful. Yes,
give it some type of focus. That way you don't have all of this trivial stuff that comes up like, gossip and all that type of thing, because evil comes into a vacuum. People know this. You have a gathering of 100 people and whatnot with no kind of agenda, and this is why you have all these shootings among young people. You get 100 young people together and nobody has an agenda. Nobody has an idea why they're there. Then all of the poison begins to come to the surface. I mean, what you are looking at me for. I mean, and then you start picking at each other. See, that's what people do when they start getting bored, when there's nothing to talk about, when there's no focus, when there's no plan, and people are just sitting around eating and looking at each other, and looking at each other, and looking at each other, and looking at each other.
Next thing you do, they start picking.
Then they start picking. I mean, that's just automatic. But if everybody is very animated, everybody's very, highly motivated and whatnot, and talking about problem solving and how to go about solving problems, and everybody's having some input, I mean, people can all try to talk at once and all like that. And everybody's jovial and whatnot, but you're problem solving. And everybody leaves there, I mean, feeling excellent. When they get back on the plane and all like that, they say that was an excellent reunion.
Okay.
I came here feeling kind of down, but I'm leaving here because, I heard from Cousin
I'm feeling
Jake.
Lifted.
Yeah, right. I mean, the things that he inspired me and whatnot.
Right.
He also gave me some information about what I should do about this and what I should do about that. I couldn't get none of this information from any of my associates on the job and all like that.
Mr. Fuller, stay right there. Stay right there.
Right.
We've got so much more to come and
Right.
so much more to cover. Stay right there. More
Right.
coming up on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. This is the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio the way it should be heard. We've got so much going on, so many things happening. But Mr. Fuller kind of has dropped what I call a bombshell when he said that there's just too much celebration going on in the African American community, and that as opposed to doing all the celebrating that we ought to do, we ought to be doing problem solving. Now, Mr. Fuller, of course, is the author of 2 definitive works on racism, race relations, white supremacy, all of these things, and I'll give him a chance to get in there. But he dropped that, and that is very, very heavy, particularly in the African American community, because this is the season of celebration. I mean, celebrations all over the place, from high school graduations, college graduations, family reunions, picnics, outings, you name it. Outdoor this, outdoor this. The 4th of July is coming up. Memorial Day has just passed. State Fair. I mean, all kinds of outings are going on. So I'm going to go back through this in this season and kind of walk through each one of these to see if I get the feeling of what Mr. Fuller is talking about. Mr. Fuller, so high school graduations, events like that, would those be perceived in the code as constructive events that people need to go to? And then the receptions that follow, where people drink, I mean, not necessarily drink liquor, but sometimes they do, and they have parties for the graduate and all that. Are you saying that those are not constructive activities?
You can have that frame of reference. You can have those activities, the way those activities are being conducted. It's a lot of wasteful activities, and a lot of it is just out and out non-constructive altogether. It goes from just pure waste, just people just kind of milling around. I mean, with fixed smiles on their faces. I mean, and just looking wide-eyed. I mean, and looking around and got a paper cup in their hands and just walking around. I mean, almost like zombies and whatnot. And and a lot of artificial this and artificial that, including the food. And it's just too much artificiality and not enough constructive activities, not enough planning. I mean, and people would feel better, actually. Mm-hmm. If people are telling them at these gatherings, they'll say, now at this gathering, what we're going to do is talk about people's problems. I mean, everybody here has some problems of some kind, small or large. Some people have fewer problems than others.
But it's a high school graduation. It's a reception for someone who just did something constructive. They graduated from high school, they graduated from college, or they completed some kind of special effort. They put special work in, and people are having a reception honoring that person, where they're standing, they're clapping, they're cheering for the person. What could be wrong with that? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Well, on nothing as far as it goes, it doesn't go far enough. And see, it's too much hand clapping and whatnot. It always disturbs me when I see huge numbers of black people just hand clapping endlessly, endlessly hand clapping. I mean, it's...
Wow. Wait, hold on for a minute. Why is that disturbing?
It's disturbing because there's no second act. And there's too much of it. I mean, you can just be better, no hand clapping at all, and everybody just says, hey, we're going to assemble in room number C, meeting room, and now at least the Corleones, like this program opens up, we're going to meet in here and we're going to talk business. We're going to talk business. I mean, we're going to go right from the getting your diploma and go right over here in this big meeting room, and then we're going to take it right from there, and you're going to be a lot happier when you come out of that meeting room, because we are going to talk about what you are going to be doing as of tomorrow, now that you have graduated. And that everything that's said in that meeting room is going to be more money in your pocket. It's going to be more of this and more of that. You're going to have very concrete directions. You're not going to just be walking around with a piece of paper in your hand and your cap and gown and looking out at this great big angry world and wondering, what am I going to do now? Which is exactly what happens with too many people. It shouldn't be that. You move over to the very next room right after you pick up that piece of paper. And in that room, hey, now we get down to business of your next step. And the next step is going to be something that's going to make you very happy. Because starting with a week from now, you're going to be off and running, doing this and doing that, and everything is going to be gainful because we are laying out plans. These were plans that were made before you got your cap and gown. All right? And we know just about where you can fit in and where you can go that would be productive to you. And we want everybody to assemble over there, and we're going to have a fine time doing it, too.
And that's what you mean by second act. Meaning there's no purpose to the graduation other than once the graduation is over, everybody gets drunk, and then they wake up the next morning looking silly because there's nothing that comes after it. And then the child wanders around for days with no direction, no nothing, and then
They've been abandoned.
Right. Then life becomes hopeless almost.
Yes. I mean, you almost can feel it coming. I mean, as you walk down and pick up your diploma, you're thinking about what happens after this?
Yes. What next?
What is life? What next? I mean, you begin to feel naked at a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
After all the festivities die down and whatnot, and you get in the car that picked you up and take you away from the crowd and all like that, now you begin to feel, now what am I going to do? What is life going to be like? Now, I know what I have seen before with other people who went before me.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be my plight too? You got to be asking that question. I know this because I've been there.
Well, especially African Americans, because they're not in control of any economics, any economic systems anywhere. There's, and with the Corleones, they controlled maybe billions and trillions of dollars, and that they didn't directly control. They had maximum influence over, so they could tell a person once he finishes, you will go there. And they can tell him with certainty, you will go there. This is the plan. African Americans, once they finish, they've got to go ask somebody for something and hope that they'll get it.
And most of the time, not even knowing what to ask for. There's no direction at all. Not even knowing what to ask for. And I know that that's true. Most people who are listening to this program right now know that that's true. Cap and gown, diploma in hand, but when you walk out into the big world, you don't even know who to talk to about what. Even what to ask for. You don't even know what to ask for. You walk up to a person and the person says, well, now you got your cap and gown, you got your diploma. What are you going to do now? You almost feel like, you're being intimidated. What do I do now? I mean, no, somebody tell me what do I do now. They've been telling me everything else all these years. Go to school, get my diploma, go here, go there, cross your T's, dot your I's. Now I've done all that. Now what?
Mm-hmm.
Now what? Who do I talk to? Where do I go? Everybody walks away. Say, well, go out into the world and be a success. Oh, wait a minute. I mean, out into the world where? Where is this success? Well, you'll find it out there somewhere. You tell a black person that in a world dominated by racism, is that a prescription for success?
What you're saying is that's a prescription for disaster.
That's exactly what it is. And 2 years later, I mean, where is he? He's in trouble. That's what. Where is she?
So what does all this hugging and greeting, and you know how we do. Oh, my God, do we put on a show with the hugging and with the handshakes and with the laughter? What's all that about then?
I detest it, and I've gotten to the place where I don't even like to do it at all. Not at all. Zero. And the reason why is because when I look at things like The Godfather and The Sopranos, they're always hugging. They hug you, and 5 hours later, you're catching a bullet from a 9mm. And black people do a huge number of that.
Yeah, a lot of hugging.
We come together, do a whole lot of hugging. We got 15 different types of handshakes and all like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then anytime 15 of us get together for anything, it's a lot of hostility that comes to the surface after all of that hugging and whatnot. After all that going around saying, you my man. Love you, man.
I mean, we see it in church. We see it after
everywhere.
church.
Backbiting, backstabbing.
Yeah.
But plenty of hugging.
Plenty of hugging.
Plenty of hugging. Just hugging and hugging and hugging. High-fiving and hugging. That is almost like a badge. And reminds me of people in the mafia. People in what they call organized crime. The Corleones.
Now,
the
Mr.
Sopranos.
Fuller, before we saw movies, a lot of movies about the mafia, before black people really saw them coming up in the 20s and maybe the 30s and 40s. I don't know, you weren't around that far ago, but what I'm saying is, What do you recall when you were coming up? Do you recall seeing all that hugging and backslapping and all that kind of stuff go
Not
on?
among black people, no.
You did not?
No.
That's
Black
interesting.
People, yeah, most grandmothers and all like that, they would just walk up and they'd say, "Sit down here, fella, I want to talk to you." And she'd sit down in the rocking chair and she'd talk. She didn't do a whole lot of hugging, but she'd do a lot of talking. I mean, when I say do a lot of talking, actually she didn't do a lot of talking. She did very little talking, but what she would say would be right on point.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we need to use that. Think of that
As the
as
model?
the most constructive way. Yeah, as the model. I mean, forget about the hugging. Just sit down, pull up a chair, and say, "Okay, son, now here's what." All right, now we're getting somewhere.
So when we came,
But all the hugging without any talking and without any prescription, without
but you know
any plan
something,
for
you know
anything
something, Mr.
doesn't
Fuller,
work.
you're absolutely, because I don't remember all of that coming up. I don't remember all of that. I mean, and we weren't cold or insensitive or unloving towards each other. I just don't remember all of that. You're right. I mean, when my father said, "Do your work before you play." I mean, that was his edict. And when he met you, it was always about work. It was about getting something done. And he put that notion in our brains. And that's how we are today. It's about work, and work becomes joy. Work becomes your fun. Work, you live your work because you're getting something constructive done. But but I don't remember. You're right. I don't remember all of this that I see now. You're all this hugging every 5 minutes. Everybody's falling all over top of each other, and I don't do it. I try not to do a lot of it, but it's very difficult to just walk away and not do that, because people say you cold, they'll say you insensitive, and then they'll say your mother, you didn't get enough lap time and all that kind of stuff. You see, so it's hard to break this, Mr. Fuller. How do we break it?
You break it by simply doing it, and just do it. I mean, and see, the concentration should be on people themselves. When we say people don't get along or people should get along, it has to do with doing something. And the doing is not just touching and feeling and hugging. The doing is if you ever notice, if two people are like in the movie Shane. Now, I just use a movie for an example. The two people there were trying to move a...
You're talking about Shane with Alan Ladd.
Shane with Alan Ladd,
right.
a Western movie,
right.
Van Heflin.
Right.
They were trying to move a tree stump. And, one of them would swing the axe for a while, then the other would swing the axe for a while. I mean, they'd take a little break, and then they'd go back to swinging the axe again. Now, one was working from one side, and the other was working from the other side. They'd been trying to get that tree stump out of the ground because they had to hack it to pieces with their axes in order to do it. They didn't have modern machines or power tools, anything like that. So they would kind of look up at each other every now and then and just kind of smile at each other because they were making progress doing the work. Now, that was you might say, the camaraderie. That was the thing that was bringing them together, moving the tree stump. They were working toward a goal, getting that tree stump out of the way, because it was interfering with other things that they were trying to do. So that's why they were working at it, and it was very hard work. But there were two people working together. They were almost strangers, but when they finished working together, they weren't strangers, because they were both working toward a common goal. Wow. And this is what brings people together. So you have to have something, some object other than each other, because when the object is just each other, and you're just sitting and looking at each other, and you're not doing anything constructive, you'll learn to dislike each other. That's just a progression of things.
Wow.
You'll start picking at each other. And this is what happens when people just sit around a big table at a family reunion. Next thing you know, the gossip comes out. Oh, there's Keisha. Was she at the last family reunion?
Stay right there.
Oh, yeah, here comes Keisha.
Stay right there, Mr. Fuller. We're going to get into Keisha and more than that coming up on the compensatory concept, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. I'm Brother Kahari, always sitting in with Mr. Fuller. And this program is designed to open up and begin to talk about racism, white supremacy, all of the other isms that are used to divide people, to destroy people, to hamper the development of the whole human being so that everyone lives up to their full potential as human beings. And so we get into this. It's not designed to castigate any group, put down anybody. It's always designed to talk about what does exist and how we can begin to dismantle it so that we produce justice on the planet for everybody. And if we aren't talking about that, then I don't know what else there is in life to talk about, because these realities exist, and they exist. And the more you don't talk about them, the more they stay and the more they grow. And actually, in the short or long run, the worse the situation can get. But we're dealing with in this segment, we're talking about things that need to change so that people move away from doing what they do, which is behaviors that are non-constructive, into problem solving or dealing with constructive behaviors that improve the conditions that people live under. And that's one of the big problems. People are constantly living in hellish situations, and yet they don't seem to be able to know how to get on top or how to solve it. They seem to be going in circles more and more and more, doing the same thing. And of course, when you do the same thing and it's non-productive, you get the same results. And that's what we're seeing. And so we're going through some of those behaviors that need to change. And one of the biggest behaviors is this need, particularly of black people, not to address reality. What they want to do, according to what Mr. Fuller said, is party, celebrate. And the only time they come out or think about anything is when there's a next party. Now the big party is a game. It can be a Super Bowl game. Now it's the NBA playoffs. When you get into conversations, especially with black males, Mr. Fuller, it's rare that you engage black men where they are really having constructive conversation. Usually they're going to talk about the game, they get all animated. In fact, get so animated, sometimes they want to fight you. Why is it that they get so caught up in this kind of nonsense, Mr. Fuller?
Well, because that's all we're given. We're not given any kind of focus. That's why we walk around mostly with kind of numbers on ourselves. Imitating some quarterback or something like that, or some baseball person. And we want jerseys. We want some kind of identification with somebody who is in sports. And you'll see a 40-year-old person, 50-year-old person walking around with number 89 on his front and back. Of some major league team of some type and whatnot. And that's what they identifies with. And so he walks up to someone, gets on the elevator, the freight elevator and whatnot. That's where the conversation is going to be. It's 4 other black people on there, and somebody mentioned something about some sports, some football team, some basketball team, not so much baseball, certainly not hockey, but usually if it's basketball season, someone will mention something about it.
Right.
And that's the conversation piece.
Well, they built a whole industry off of this. A whole industry of being focused on nothing. It's amazing. It's amazing. But yet somebody's making billions of dollars off of it. People are being paid millions to do absolutely nothing. It's amazing how important a basketball game is. And it has no relevance to solving anything on this planet that's important. Nothing. And yet people get caught up in this, Mr. Fuller. They're being what you're saying is they're being programmed to be caught up in this.
Yeah, yes, but see, and I'm really not condemning that so much, because somebody, standing, yelling at the team, and they, at that moment, there's some type of interaction between that person and the person standing next to them, if they're yelling, in praise of the same team. But why doesn't that same enthusiasm, that same energy, spill over into all of the other things, like doing something of constructive value in all of the other areas of activity, economics, education, not just entertainment, but in labor, in law, in politics. And you have some of it in religion. That's why people keep going to church, I guess.
But Mr. Fuller,
they'll pick up a little of that for a couple of hours out of a week.
But here's
what about the rest of the week?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. But here's the problem with this. This is why I do have some concern with it. All of that energy, all of that emotion, all of that mindset is caught up and controlled by all the subliminal stimuli surrounding a basketball game. All the commercials, all the things that are designed, they have produced a sports industry, Mr. Fuller, sports channels that are huge, huge. And all it does is keep these guys clued to something as mindless as a game. Keeps them going in and out, and then they gamble on these games. That's why I think some of the emotional stuff is there, is because folk are gambling like 40 going north on all of these games. And then it takes their money, it takes their emotion, then it saps their mind. To me, this is very detrimental. You don't think so?
Yes, I've seen it have that detrimental effect. In fact, I know of occasions, of situations where people, and some of them really middle age. I'm not talking about teenagers. I'm talking about someone who is about 50 years old. And actually, when his team lost, he couldn't hardly come to work the next day.
Right.
And if he came to work, he was walking around, very sad. And it wasn't because he lost money on the team. It's just a team loss.
He was emotionally caught up in
He was emotionally drained.
That's right.
Completely emotionally drained, like someone in the family had died.
Right. They live for this. That's the point I'm trying to make. There's something incorrect about this behavior, don't you? There's something very detrimental. You can't get 5 black men to come out to any event to do something constructive. But if you invite them to come over to watch a game, have beer, et cetera, they'll show up. Or a boxing match, they'll show something with fun and games. They will show up. And that's the point I'm trying to get. How do we break this hold? How do we turn that around?
Well, we don't turn it around. What we do is morph that into the other areas of activity, like economics. That same type of enthusiasm. How you use your time and energy, which is basic economics according to what I've written. Mm-hmm. It's not just money. It's how you use your time, how you use your energy, your very conversations with people. Be enthusiastic about talking about things that are constructive, things that will help somebody to problem solve. See, we can keep that focus just on those 2 words so we don't lose focus. Just those 2 words. We can just ask ourselves all day long, this thing that I'm fixing to do, this thing that I'm thinking about doing, this place that I'm fixing to go, does it have anything to do with problem solving? And if it does, what problem? And what would be the solution to the problem? Does it have any connection with problem solving? Mm-hmm. Suppose we were in that frame of mind. Overnight, we would be a completely different people from the type of non-constructive people that we basically are. If we just walked around all day thinking about the most constructive way to solve problems.
So what you're saying is...
And be completely enthusiastic. Actually be joyful about it. Be like it's super entertainment over the top. Problem solving. Every time we solved a problem, boy,
I see what you mean. I see, because basically when they sit around and talk about a game or what happened in the game, they are all sitting around trying to problem solve. They're trying to figure out what was done wrong, why this team didn't win, who did this, who did that. So what you're saying, that is problem solving, but in a non-constructive way.
But it's too limited. See what I mean? They're just limiting that to a game. Why not spill that same enthusiasm over into everything else that you do 24/7?
Gotcha.
Yes. Economics. See what I mean? Why not problem solve there? Why not be enthusiastic about that? how you use your time and energy even. I mean, the food that you eat. I mean, problem solving. Get rid of obesity, problem solving. How do we go about doing that? Talk about that at the family reunion.
Create that same
hey,
energy.
We got everybody here. I mean, we got 78 people here at the family reunion. And, and everybody now is in much better health than they were at the last family reunion because we came together and talked about how we could go about doing that for the entire extended family. And now everybody here, is looking good, looking fit and whatnot, moving fast. I mean, hey, and it's not like that family reunion we had 8 years ago. I mean, just look at everybody here. Everybody's healthy. Why? Because we came together at the family reunion and we concentrated on just that for a little while, along with all the other things that we came together. I mean, this family is really humming, the extended family. There's no animosity and whatnot because everybody comes here in a problem-solving mood. Nobody's coming in here, like I started to illustrate a while ago, talking about Keisha been married 3 times, and that's her 3rd husband, and we like that 2nd husband, so I ain't talking to that 3rd one she's got because she's had too many husbands. I mean, and I don't particularly know if I like Keisha anyway, and this is what it degenerates into.
And there we go.
And there we go. And then that type of poison spreads. But if you come there, and sure, you might know that that's Keisha's 3rd husband, but that's not important to you because what you got on that piece of paper in front of you sitting around that dinner table and whatnot when everybody's all gathered there in the banquet room is that, hey, these are the problems I came here to solve. I got a list of them. And I got suggestions about how we can solve Jake's problem, how we can solve Cousin Henry's problem, how we can, and that's what I got, and that's what I came here to concentrate on. You got that right there in front of you, lying on the table. And this is going to be my contribution to the family reunion this year. I got it all lined up here, how we can solve the problems of all these people in the family that we talked about last year that were having these problems. And I figured out how to solve all these problems for 8 people on this piece of paper right in front of me. That's what you call real codification. That's practical stuff.
So
and so I don't have time to think about Keisha's 3rd husband because I didn't come here to talk about that. I'm not even thinking about that. I'm talking to Keisha and her 3rd husband, and I'm talking about problem solving.
Right, I came here to problem solve.
Right.
Wow.
And if everybody came there like that, I mean, hey, the whole family gets to be, hey, you get to know everybody, in the most constructive manner. See, so when everybody goes back to the towns that they came from and all like that, everybody's feeling real excellent about everything that happened at that reunion because everything, every day, all 3 days was about people meeting and problem solving and having a good time doing it.
In the process of saving themselves, they saved. Yes. They did something constructive. They felt
uplifted.
They did
something constructive.
And it changed the whole concept of what it is that you were there.
We got Aunt Corrine off of dialysis. Because we got a couple of doctors that is in the family.
Mr. Fuller, we've got about 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Just wanted to give you, if you could, a few seconds. You got to be real quick to say something about the upcoming Father's Day.
Well, the upcoming Father's Day, since we're going to have these so-called quote-unquote celebrations, have them about problem solving. If you make any contact with fathers or anything associated with that, anything like that, it's not just a matter of just giving them another tie or something like that. It's figuring out what the problem is. Does he have a problem? What is that problem?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
Thank you.